There was a moment on the Good Morning Britain sofa that felt smaller than it looked. No fanfare, no dramatic music cue, just a quiet exchange about what actually makes someone good at answering questions under pressure. And somehow, that quiet exchange is still being talked about. Darragh Ennis wasn't performing. That's the first thing worth saying. Viewers who know him only as the Menace on The Chase are used to seeing him in competition mode, sharp, clipped, almost unreadable. But sitting across from the GMB presenters, something shifted. His shoulders relaxed. His voice slowed down. And when he started talking about what actually separates a good quizzer from everyone else, it didn't sound like a soundbite. It sounded like someone genuinely trying to explain a part of himself that most people never get to see. That's usually when a television moment stops being television and starts being something else. Many viewers noticed how differently he spoke about failure. Not as a footnote, not as false modesty, but as something closer to a working method. The suggestion, delivered almost offhandedly, was that the people who look unshakable on screen have usually spent years being wrong in private and made peace with it. It's a strange thing to hear from a man whose entire job is projecting infallibility for an hour a day on national television. Maybe that's exactly why it landed the way it did. There's a possibility that this is what resonated most with the studio audience and with people watching at home, the sense that expertise, real expertise, isn't about knowing everything. It's about not panicking when you don't. Some people watching felt that this reframing quietly undercut the mythology around quiz shows altogether, the idea that chasers are simply walking encyclopedias. Instead, what came through was something more human: pattern recognition, curiosity, and an almost stubborn refusal to be embarrassed by getting something wrong in front of millions of people. It almost seemed as though the presenters sensed they'd stumbled onto something more interesting than a promotional chat. The questions got slower, less scripted. There was a pause, one of those small, unremarkable silences that somehow says more than a full sentence, right before the conversation turned toward memory and how it actually works under studio lights, with a clock ticking and an audience watching every flicker of hesitation. Viewers online interpreted the exchange as oddly comforting, in a way few people expected from a segment about a game show. Because underneath the specifics of buzzers and categories was a much older question, the one that quietly follows most of us around: how do you stay calm when you're being watched, and everyone is waiting to see if you'll get it wrong? The atmosphere in that segment changed the moment it stopped being about trivia and started being about temperament. That's why it felt significant, even though nothing especially newsworthy technically happened. No scandal. No confrontation. Just a person known for a very specific, high-pressure skill, explaining, almost reluctantly, that the skill was never really about the facts at all. While nothing has been confirmed about exactly how much of that segment was planned versus how much simply emerged in the moment, that uncertainty is part of what makes it feel real. Television is usually so tightly controlled that an unplanned pause, an unscripted admission, stands out precisely because it wasn't supposed to be the highlight. Some audiences began wondering whether this is why Darragh Ennis has become such an enduring presence on British television in the first place, not despite the calm, understated delivery, but because of it. In a landscape full of performers reaching for the loudest reaction, there's something quietly disarming about someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to hold a room's attention. Maybe what stayed with viewers wasn't the specific advice about quizzing at all. Maybe it was the reminder, tucked inside an ordinary morning segment, that composure is learned, not innate, that even the people who look untouchable on screen had to build that stillness one wrong answer at a time. And perhaps that's why moments like this continue to spark conversation long after the cameras stop rolling. Not because of what was said, but because of how rarely someone says it that plainly, on a sofa, before 9 in the morning, with the whole country still waking up. What did you notice in that moment? Did it change how you watch The Chase, or how you think about pressure in your own life? Drop your thoughts below.